Aristocrats Soccer Podcast, the elite soccer podcast and all of soccer podcasting. I am your co-host, David Harris, with our other co-host and featured guest, part two, Jake Keegan. Jake, how's it going?
It's going great, Dave. If you guys sat through all of part one, thank you from the bottom of my heart that you care about me enough to sit through 2 hours of me talking. But we have a part two for you. We're really excited to put it out there.
It's going to be a very short part two. We're just going to blow through everything. And
just quick bullet points, bang, bang, bang.
The half hour of the second half of Jake's career in a half hour or less.
Good luck.
Please give one-word answers to the following as I mention names. So, all right. Well, let's pick up from where I think we kind of left off with the last interview. And so, basically, we're at the point now where you finish your second season in 2015 in Galway United. The club consolidated their position, Irish Premier Division. Looking at 2016, possibility of continuing on with Galway was there for you. It was definitely an option. You could have gone back for a third season in Ireland and played another year in the Premier Division with Galway and tried to move up from a relegation battle to possibly looking to get a spot in Europe maybe and try to look to see if you can make a run in the cup again and win the cup, or at this point you wanted to look into other options and see what else is available. So just kind of bring us through that process now, where it was sort of like Galway or what else?
Yeah, so FC Edmonton, who were a club in the NASL at the time, which was a very good league, very well-paid league. They reached out to me in September before this Galway season even finished. So they reached out to me, basically made me an offer, whatever it was through an agent. It was through Axel, who was my agent at the time. And I finished out the season with Galway. I knew that was an option for sure. And once the Galway season had finished, Tommy Dunn, the Galway manager, he had come to me in July, offered me an extension, and I said no at the time because I wanted to kind of see what was out there. And I told him we could negotiate again after the season. So he came to me again after the season. It was a good season for me. He was happy with it. He had just signed a new 2-year contract as well with the club, so it was a good year for him from his personal point of view. So he came to me with an offer. It was a good offer. It was much improved from what I was on the previous season. And the Edmonton offer was a lot better even than the increased Galway offer. And it was just one of those things at that point in my career. My thought process was, all right, if I go to Edmonton, I do well there, maybe I can go to either a better NASL, USL team, like one of the top ones, like maybe the Cosmos, or maybe potentially I could break into MLS in a very roundabout way. I think that was my goal at that time, was to try to break back into MLS after not going to MLS when I had the opportunity in the first place, right. which is kind of funny. But that was my thought process. And I remember vividly, like, Tommy Dunn was so great for my career, both as a player. I mean, he helped me off the field. He showed so much belief in me, like we spoke about. So I remember we had a meeting with Tommy and Jonathan Corbett, who was a kind of a front office guy with the club at the time. And it was at one of the hotels. It wasn't the Connacht, but it was a different one. And it was one of the last nights before we left. And Tommy was like, all right, here's your official offer. Like, what can we do to keep you here, more or less? And I was like, it was more of like we were joking, reminiscing type thing. And I joked, I was like, well, if you double my wages, I'll stay. Double what they've offered. And I mean, they wouldn't have been able to do that. That would have caused the club to go bankrupt. So, I mean, I think it was more of a joke, but he didn't bite on the bait. And then after that, I flew back to the U.S. And then within like a week, I flew to Edmonton. Just checked out the city. No one was really there. But I just saw the Andreas Morse, who was like the do everything kind of guy, the handyman at the club. Really important person for that club. And he showed me around the city, showed me the apartments where I'd be living. And then I signed the contract there, which was middle of November with FC Edmonton.
And this is in 2015.
This is November of 2015.
Okay. And so there you go. So the decision was made. You're going to go with Edmonton, give it a shot. And, I think that everybody's mind, and even from my own conversations with Tommy at the time, made complete sense. I mean, a lot to the next step. So I guess talk us a little bit about 2016, 2017. Take us through those 2 years with Edmonton and, the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, the in-between. I mean, for everybody, I think everybody's pretty familiar with Edmonton, FC Edmonton, and NASL. But just, to kind of give us like a bit of a frame of reference to, at NASL time, there wasn't, there was never a ton of teams in the league. There were certain, decent number, but Edmonton is so far out west and, very in north.
And very north.
So the travel was always going to be a big factor in, your time there, traveling to and from the games. So that's one aspect of it. But, it was definitely, I think a good step, logical step to a good level team. But take us through those years anyway.
Yeah, well, first off, on the travel, it was I think it was 2016, they did an article, and we had the most miles traveled for any domestic soccer team in the world. So like MLS, USL, like Russian Premier League Russia's a massive country. We had the most miles traveled like per away match or something along those lines, like total miles traveled. They did a whole article on it, and I think I greatly underestimated the travel when I was like coming from Ireland. The longest thing is maybe like a 3 or 4 hour bus trip. And I really underestimated the effect that would have on your body when you're going and you're traveling just crazy miles. There was one trips.
The longest trip in Ireland is a trip with Tommy Dunn from Galway to Dundalk. So
exactly.
All the way.
Exactly. So you go from that to Edmonton to Puerto Rico, which you go Edmonton to Toronto to New York to Miami to Puerto Rico sometimes. And it's 17, 18-hour travel days. It's absurd. And it definitely takes a toll on your body. But I think as a club, especially that first year, we did a really good job of it. We had a lot of experienced players, a lot of really good players in our team. And around the league, the talent level was incredible. Like, if you go through it. But just in our team in particular, we had Adam Eckersley, Richie Jones, who was unfortunately injured when I was there, but they both made first-team appearances with Man United. We had Dean Shields, who the second season, who got Rangers promoted from the 4th tier to the 3rd tier, the 3rd tier to the 2nd tier, 2nd tier to the 1st tier. And then that's not even mentioning guys like Daryl Fordyce, Albert Watson, Sandy Nyasi. Like I could go down the list of guys who have either played in MLS or played in high levels in Northern Ireland. Then we had Matt Van Onkel, who probably had the best single season of any keeper I've ever played with. So it was a really great experience from the standpoint of the players I had around me. Was the talent level was incredible. And then every week we'd go away and we'd be playing Wanarongo with the Cosmos, who was in the Bundesliga forever. Then we would go down to Tampa and play Joe Cole. And then we'd go to Rayo OKC and they had Giorgio Samaras and Michelle and Robbie Finley, and I can't remember all the names. But there was so many good players in that league, and it was a privilege to play in it. So it definitely had its ups and downs, like you're saying, but that was definitely the coolest part about it. All the good players that were in that league, and it was just so great to have a league like the NASL and US Soccer, where guys were making way more than just a living wage. They were making legitimate salaries, and it obviously wasn't sustainable, as we saw, because the league ended up folding after my second season in 2017. But there was a spell there where guys were on easily 6 figures, and sometimes it's like in Miami FC's case, their whole starting 11 was on six figures, which for a second division soccer league is just incredible. But I can ramble on about that as long as you want. But
yeah, no. Let's actually focus a little bit more on. So like let's focus on you and as you were coming in. Let's talk a little bit about your initial discussions with Colin Miller, who was the manager at FC Edmonton, and what was your impression or what was your idea as far as where you'd fit into the team? What did he see you as? And then go from there.
That was something that, looking back, I should have done more. I should have had more conversations with Colin. I never met Colin, and I never even spoke on the phone with Colin until right before I was about to sign. So Edmonton made me the offer, but I had never spoken to Colin. I had just spoken to the agent, Axel, who was orchestrating the deal. And then when I went to go visit Edmonton, Colin wasn't there in November. So I called him on the phone for maybe 5 minutes, if that. He was just like, welcome to Edmonton, excited to have you, that kind of stuff. And looking back, I think it's so important, whether you're in the professional level, college level, whatever it is, the coach is the person who controls your livelihood in a lot of cases. So you have to have a relationship and you have to at least do your research beforehand. And I don't think I did a good enough job of that. But at the same time, when I came in that first preseason, he loved me. I was getting goals. I think he liked my work rate. He's a very defensive-minded coach. So I think he appreciated the work I put in on the defensive side of the ball. And he saw me as just an attacking player. We had a striker, Tomi Amiobi, who was pretty much always going to play. He was like 6'2", 6'3", target striker. He loved him, and he was always going to be the number 9. So I never really was in the plans for that. I think he just saw me, maybe we can go two up front, or maybe he can play out wide. And I think he thought there was always going to be a place for me in his team, but he just wasn't sure exactly where it was going to be. And then what ended up happening when the season started.
Is this based on anything he actually said to you, though, or?
No, it was. He said some things in the press that to the newspaper in Edmonton that I was one of the guys that stuck out in preseason. He had conversations with me about he thought I was doing really well in the preseason games. It doesn't even need to be said a lot of times. You can just feel a coach's energy towards you. If they're not happy with you, they are very distant, and he was not like that at all at the beginning. He thought I was going to be a big part of the team. And then what ended up happening was the first 2 games of the season, I came off the bench, and then the third game I started on the wing, and then Tomi got hurt. So then I ended up starting, I think, 3 or 4 games in a row as a number 9. And I scored twice. I thought I had a good run. The team was doing well. We lost 2 of our first 3 games. And then when I moved to the number 9, we kind of went on a good run. So I was buzzing with it. I was like, this is a good setup. Things were for the beginning. I was delighted, honestly. Things were going well. The league was a really high level. And then when Tomi came back into the team, he went back into that number 9 spot, and I ended up moving out wide. And for the most part, I had a good amount of success for that period from whatever game 6 or 7 to game 20 or 21 of the season. Scored maybe 3 goals during that spell, but we were winning every game. By the end of August, we finished one in the NASL. It's a spring and fall format, and we finished 1 point away from winning the league in the spring, which would give you an automatic place into the playoffs. And then in August, we were down away in Tampa. We beat them 1-0 on a penalty by Daryl Fordyce. And with that, we were actually in first place in the combined standings, which for FC Edmonton was unheard of. They had never made the playoffs. They made the playoffs once the first season. They hadn't made it since 2011. They were always towards the bottom of the table, and we were just having so much success. And it was a fun time to be at the club, but at the same time, we knew it was by thin margins because so many of our games were 1-0. Matt Van Onkel makes so many good saves. Albert Watson, Pop Diakite, our 2 center backs are blocking shots left, right, and center. So we knew there was always that chance if we dropped off in form a little bit that it wasn't going to be as easy. Whereas you have teams like the Cosmos that will regularly win games 4-1. So we were playing with fire a little bit. And then I think after that game in Tampa, we fell off. I fell off personally. My form dropped. I just wasn't as good as I was. I think I wore down a little bit towards like September and October of that season. It was my first season playing exclusively as a winger, or especially the way Edmonton plays. It was a lot of ground for me to cover, and I fell out of the team. I was still coming off the bench regularly, but I didn't start as many games, and that kind of coincided with us falling off. We still, based on our good performances over the course of the season, we made the playoff, which was the semifinal, and then we went away to Indy 11, and Indy beat us 1-0. So I mean, but for the first season, I was happy enough with it. Like, I thought I could be utilized better on a personal level, but the team was good. I learned a lot, especially from Adam Eckersley, who was the left back at the time, and I was playing on the left side and on the winger or midfield, whatever you want to call it. And he helped me play that position so much. I think if I had someone else behind me who was less experienced, who was less demanding, to be quite frank, I wouldn't have done as well as I did in that position. I think you kind of mentioned it in my Galway years. I played left winger like a striker, and I think I got a little bit better at finding the right areas, picking up the right pockets, defending properly, and things like that. And I owe Adam a lot.
It's an adjustment, it's not to, just take it easy, but like a similar player like that we both know would be like Leo Fernandez. When Leo was young, and I remember seeing him, when he was at college, and he was always the number 10, and maybe he had played it before, I don't know, but to go up to the pro level, I noticed a big change, and I'm sure it took a little while for him to adjust to that. And when he was with the Cosmos, he'd be playing, and he's still playing left wing with Tampa, and it's like night and day. You see the adjustment, and the changes that he made. So it is a big adjustment to go from a center forward or attacking, center position to the wide, being a winger and knowing all the different aspects of it. It's not something that just comes overnight. So, but let's go a little bit further, and then maybe like into the off season and any kind of discussions you had with Colin, any feedback you got from him. I don't want to focus too much, but I think it's important on Colin. But I know some of the things didn't really go too well as with you guys, and I think probably with him and some of the other guys too, from what I've heard. But just take us through a little bit about your feedback you got from him and what you were looking to do as you went into 2017.
Yeah, so the initial talks I had with Colin were, so I had an option for the second season, and they picked it up right away. He was basically just said he was happy with me. I brought up that I would like to play more as a number 9, and he said that those opportunities would be there. Like, it was either, he said he wasn't really planning on bringing another striker, so it was always me and Tommy, but Tommy was always fit for that first season besides that little run of games, so I never really got a chance as the number 9. So he saw me as like a second choice striker, also maybe first or second choice on the wing. So he saw me as that kind of utility type guy, and he thought that I would get more opportunity. From my point of view, I knew that I didn't want to be back there. If possible, I knew that I wanted to play more as a number 9, but also Edmonton, just the way we defended was so deep. It was effective. We only allowed I think it was something like 20 goals in 32 games, which is incredible. But we defended basically 11 men 40 yards out. Even Tommy, the number 9, would drop very deep. So when you defend that deep, it takes so much energy to then counter and get in the box and score goals, because it's 60 yards, 70 yards you have to make up. Whereas if you press the game high, which is the way I prefer to play, whether I'm a winger or a striker, if you press the game high on goal kicks and things like that, you get turnovers in your attacking third, and then you only have to run 10 yards and you have a chance. So I just knew that style, although it was effective for FC Edmonton, and you can't necessarily fault Colin Miller for sticking to his beliefs, because any manager should stick to what they believe in, because it's their job or they're going to get sacked. So I don't fault him in that case, but I knew that didn't suit my style. So I wanted to leave. So I spoke to Axel, who was my agent, right at the beginning of the offseason. I was like, listen, they picked up my option, but I don't want to be back. And Axel was he's like, I agree, it doesn't suit you, blah, blah, blah. We'll get you out. And again, I think at this point in my career, I wasn't I don't know what the right word is, but I wasn't forceful enough in making these things happen. And months went by, November, December, and Axel kept being like, ooh, this coach is kind of interested in you, but we need to get your release from Edmonton. And I would always be like, okay, let's do that. Like, let's look into doing that. And finally, middle of January, I was like, all right, what's the deal? And I go, because preseason started in the beginning of February. I was like, what's going on? And he was like, I think it's best if you just go back to Edmonton, because if I ask for your release from Colin, then he will be angry and won't play you, but he also won't release you. And he says it's happened to him in the past with other players that he's had. And for me, that was very frustrating, just because if he said that in November, I'd be like, okay, I guess that's the situation. But the fact that he kind of strung me along really pissed me off. And that led to me getting rid of Axel down the road. I just didn't feel like he was upfront with me about it. But that's the game. Like, I signed a 1 year plus an option. So I have to go back to the club and I have to be professional, which is what I did. But I was just more under the illusion that I could get out of it. And that was kind of what made it more difficult to go back. And then there were things that happened towards the end of the first season, without going into too much detail. There was a fight on the bus. It was a very cliquey team. We had kind of like a South American group, when we had like more of an English group, UK group. And after the semifinal that we lost, we're going to the airport, and there was a fight, like a fist fight, punching between players. I won't get into too many details.
I wouldn't even go.
Yeah, unless you really want. But that was kind of, it was that was the signal of it was, and I was already there, but they came to a head at that moment, and that only added to me wanting to leave, because I was like, this is just not a good situation. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of guys in Edmonton that I love, I still talk to, a lot of good guys, but it also just wasn't, the culture of the club wasn't right. And I think a lot of that comes down to it's the player's job, but I think it was also, if we had a coach that better facilitated, because we had so many guys from Africa, South America, English, like all of them good players. For the most part, all of them were good guys, but I just think the way the culture of the club was orchestrated by Colin, it just caused more tension that needed to be there. So I think if we had a different coach, it would have been a better situation. But that's just, that it is what it is. And again, like I said, I had to go back. I just had to be professional, and I did that. And I went back for the second season. And that second season, we lost Mac Manokel, the keeper, to Real Salt Lake, to MLS. Well-deserved. We lose Adam Eckersley. He went back to Scotland, I believe, and he ended up getting the club promoted that he went to. We lost. Richie Jones had to retire because of an injury. Eddie Edward, who was a fullback for us in the first half of the season, he went back to Ottawa for family reasons. Daryl Fordyce went to FC Cincinnati. I can just go down the line. There were a lot of changes in the dressing room, and there was also change in captain. So Nick Ledgerwood, who was on the team the previous season. He was a good player for us, Canadian international, but he took Colin gave him the captaincy over Albert Watson, who had been captain basically since he had gotten to the club in 2013, I want to say. So that was another thing that, like, it just changes the identity and culture of the club, and Albert was still there. So you get there in preseason, it's just a weird atmosphere, and you could tell right away that it was not going to be the same. We were already like fine margins, like we said, for the previous season in terms of being successful. And you could already tell right away, like, we were not going to have the same success in that second season.
Well, had they brought in players to replace the guys that left?
They did, but they weren't as good. It wasn't the right fit. There was just, they tried to replace them, of course, but it just wasn't the same quality. It wasn't the same experience. And I think that was the biggest thing. I think the first year, those names that I mentioned, those experienced players, they ran the dressing room and they made everybody accountable. And we also had a more settled 11 that first year. We pretty much knew who was going to play week in, week out, bar one or two, and the roles were clearly identified. Whereas that second year, we lose all these guys who are starting for us. And then you have to figure out who's going to play where, what's going to happen, like that. And it just made things a lot more difficult. And a competition for places in general is good, but in a team that is struggling to have an identity, struggling with leadership, it makes things a lot more difficult.
Obviously, we all know that the demise of the league, the demise of the club, well documented. So, what do you think, looking back, do you think any of that was sort of like looming and kind of hanging overhead, or in the background? Was that
That's a good
sort of
question.
undercurrent? I'm trying to think of any other references I could possibly come up with, like like looming, hanging in the background.
Yeah, that's a good question. I remember.
I mean, this doom is coming, Jay.
Dun, dun, dun. So I remember that offseason, there was a USSF was doing a league sanctioning, and we found out, I think it was like in January or something like that, and they were deciding whether the USL was going to take Division II or NASL was going to keep Division II or what was going to happen. And honestly, it was bad to say, but I was rooting for NASL to get Division III, so I didn't have to go back to Edmonton. It's kind of messed up, but in my mind, that's what I was kind of in the back of my head rooting for. And what ended up they deciding was NASL was 2, USL was 2, so USL or NASL would go forward another season, because they were saying if NASL dropped to 3, they would not have a season. So, I mean, it was definitely looming, but I don't think it affected our performance on the field. I think maybe the last like 10 games when we were already a bad team, we knew it was coming. We knew that FC Edmonton was probably not going to be around the next season. Then maybe it loomed, but in terms of us having a good or bad year that year, it had nothing to do with it.
Right.
Yeah. So
I think it definitely was, hanging out there. Maybe you guys didn't see it as much, but like I'm thinking back now, and I kind of remember like it just, the league felt like it wasn't quite the same as it had been the previous 2013, 2014, 2015 that I had experienced it with the Cosmos. So I remember in 2016, like you did see players that get signed that you kind of didn't think they would have signed in previous years, and
I think 2016. I think 2016 was still very good. Now, I didn't play in the league in 2015, but in 2016 we still had Minnesota United or Minnesota FC. I forgot what they were in the NASL, but there was Rio OKC, who had all those big players. The Cosmos still had big players. I think it was 2017 where the league. You're right. The league definitely dropped off in 2017. Still
2017. The second year you were there.
Still very good players. And that season, Miami FC had an unbelievable team. They didn't end up winning the title. San Francisco Deltas did. But Miami FC that year were incredible. Yeah. So, and there were only 8 teams. So one of those teams was Miami. So it was still a good league. But you're right. It did fall off a bit. So anyway.
Sorry, just had a little bit of a Wi-Fi issue there. But
Wi-Fi, 21st century problems, first world problems. So just I guess from that point, that season was obviously disappointing. I mean, the only thing that came out of it for me, I guess, I scored a cool goal for the viral goal that was like I snuck behind the keeper and scored. But overall, it was a very disappointing season. Personally, for the team, it was a tough time in my career. It was probably that year, and then kind of that off season, and then the beginning of Pats was definitely the lowest point.
What was it like to see? Did anything affect your performance, or because you weren't able to? I guess did you have? I'm trying to remember back if you had any injuries, but it just seemed like you didn't perform, at the level that I think you would have liked to.
Yeah, I didn't have any injuries. I felt really good that season. I think in fairness, I didn't start very many games until I think I started like the last 8 games of the season, which is at that point, it was toxic. Like people weren't even trying in training. It was disgraceful. Not all, I'm not saying all, but there was too many guys in that dressing room that were just taking a piss at that point in the season. And I did get to play like the last 8 because Tommy got hurt. I played the last 8 as a number 9. It was the worst time of the season to be that position. But I didn't start as many games as the first. We had more wingers that year. We had Ben Fisk came in. We still had Dustin Korea and Sandy Nyasi who were there. I'm trying to remember if that was it. But yeah, there was more wingers. Ben Fisk played a lot of games on the left, which is kind of the position that I played the previous season. So I mean, I just didn't play as many games, or I didn't start as many. I still played every week. I came off the bench, but I didn't start as many games. So that definitely played into it. But at the same time, I had plenty of time to kind of assert my position and earn a spot in the team, and I didn't do that. So I can't really complain too much in terms of like, how do you expect? I don't necessarily expect a coach to just give me a spot if I'm not doing it. So I don't have too many complaints about that part of it. My complaints with Colin would more come in like the culture he set in the club was just so backwards, and he would let some people just go off and do whatever they wanted. And it was just a very selfish culture that he created. And I think the perfect story that kind of exemplifies that was, it was actually the first year we were flying to Oklahoma to play Rio OKC. And we all got our tickets, whatever, as you normally do for an away trip. And we were flying the day before the game, and we were getting in at like, I don't know, 6 or 7 at night. And everybody had a seat except me. I was on standby. I don't know how that happened exactly, but all the players, all the staff had a seat. I didn't. So they're all boarding the plane. Colin and the rest of the staff know that I'm on standby. And I was actually starting the next day. So, and it's going to be 95 degrees in July in Oklahoma. So I tell them, listen, I don't have a seat. And they're like, you're going to have to like wait for the next available seat. Like, hopefully it's on this flight. If not, there's a flight. I think the next flight was at like a 10, I want to say. So I'm like, I think it's a little weird. I'm sitting right by the gate, and I'm just watching everybody board. Colin's one of the last people. He boards as well. This whole time they're doing the announcements like, all right, to change seat or to give up your seat and be on the next flight, it's $200. And then as they're boarding, it's like, all right, change seat, $400 credit. And everybody boards the plane. I still hear the announcements, and it goes to $600. And eventually it goes to $800 of credit for American or whatever flight we were flying on. And Colin walks off the plane when it gets to $800, and he says, you can take my seat. You better score me a hat trick tomorrow. So I get on the plane, and I take his seat, and he takes the later flight. But I'm just like that story to me is like exactly the culture of the club. Everybody was in it for themselves unless it was convenient for them to do something for someone else. And again, there were a lot of good people at the club, so I'm not saying the entire club, everybody at the club was like that, but in general, that was the culture that was created. And I don't even think that Colin should have been the one to give up his seat. We had an assistant coach who had nothing to do that night for the team. We had a trainer or like a AT, he needed to be there for treatments and stuff like that. We had the assistant coach, and I don't know if we had the kit man. We didn't always have the kit man traveling, but we definitely had the assistant coach, who was Jeff Paulus, on the flight. He had nothing to do with the team that night, and they were going to make me get on a flight at 10 or 11 o'clock at night when I was starting left wing the next day. And it's so backwards to me. Like every club I've been at, including FC Edmonton, like the players, pregame meal and stuff, the players eat first. And that is like, it's just the players eat for like, that's just, does it matter? It's 2 seconds. No. But the fact that was actually like Colin needed $800 of his personal flight credit to get off the plane is just so ridiculous to me. And if there's one story that can exemplify my feelings towards him, it's that one. So we can stop there. But
maybe he just knew. Maybe he was always going to give up the seat, and he just knew that like if he hung in there, he'd get the 800.
Maybe. If it was a random person, I might buy that. If it was Colin, I don't believe that, based on my other experiences with him. We'd have practice. He had 7 flights in his contract. His family was living in Vancouver, which is about a 2-hour plane ride from Edmonton. Regularly, he would leave after a game on Saturday or Sunday and not show up again to training until Wednesday or Thursday. So we'd be training with our assistant coach, Jeff Paulus, who was not good. He was not up to the task, and he could not command any respect. Like Colin commanded more respect than he did, but he would just take those days off. We would imagine you're a sub and you didn't get into the team, and you're like, all right, I want to have a good week of training this week and get back into the team. Which for me, that was the second season I was out of the team a lot, and the coach isn't even there until Thursday. because he's away with his family. Now I get he has to spend time with his family and he worked it into his contract, but that again is just, I mean, how is that happening? If it's once or twice, okay, but it was a regular occurrence.
Like a lot of silly stuff, I guess.
There's just, there's so many of that. So there's so much of that.
Maybe not the most professional, but like the same token, I think to go back to the point you made earlier as well, like, you know, you're like, okay, so you have, maybe not have had the greatest relationship with Colin. You probably weren't the only one, but like by the same token, every game you got a chance to play, you know, for the most part, and you know, you got opportunities to start, and you know, in fairness to Colin or any other coach, if you're out there and you're taking the game by the scruff of the neck and doing everything you need to do, and putting goals in the net, you know, you know, you're making it really hard for them to sit you down too. I mean, I'm sure you were trying, not that you weren't trying, but like, you know, I guess it's just the performance is such that, you know, you make it difficult for them to sit you down. You know, I'm sure you would have also had a better season for yourself. You know, maybe the club, maybe not, I don't know, you know, but I'm sure if you were scoring some goals, it would have helped some games. But, you know, it just seemed like, you know, like many cases where club, you know, was on a bit of a downward spiral, and, you know, you guys had that in 2017. So, are there anything else you wanted to share? You know, stories about the time in Edmonton, and you know, you've hit on the good points, you know, the good aspects of it, you know, level of players, you know, the culture maybe in the first year a little better, you know, just a lot. I mean, I think you've given a pretty, you know, balanced account, you know, and honest, you know. So, but like anything else you wanted to share that you didn't hit on that you thought would kind of, you know, just get out?
I would just say one final point would be I was never upset that I wasn't getting as many chances, because I would never blame a coach, because the style of play suited more of like a big striker. So I wanted to play, and I believe that could make a difference if I was playing more as the number 9. But that was never my issue with Colin. My issue was more the other things we discussed. So I know when I did get an opportunity as a number 9, if I was banging in goals, I would have gotten more chances. So it wasn't like a personal vendetta by any means. I just had more problems with the professionalism and things along those lines. But for the positives, I think I probably talk to more guys from FC Edmonton still today,
right,
than I do with any club. There were so many good people in that club. Andreas Morris, who was the guy that picked me up from the airport when I first signed, he is one of the best. I don't even know what exactly his title is. Colin called him Inspector Gadget. He just did everything, like all the little things, like pick people up he would pick people up from the airport. The airport was like 45 minutes from his house. He would go back and forth and pick every player up instead of having to making them taxi to their apartments and stuff. No, he was great. And if I could, he's not going to leave Edmonton, but if I could recommend him to another club, I would. And there were so many good players that I met, like Albert Watson, Daryl Fordyce, Mauro Stacchio, Natanza Sensara, Tyson Farago, the Zeeby brothers who we had on this podcast.
Right.
There were so many good guys with the club, and it's not
young guys like Shamit
Shom. Yeah, there was there's names that I'm forgetting. Matt Van Ogle was a great guy. I mean, Shane, there's just
had a heck of a year that year.
Yeah. I could go down the line. Pretty much everyone that I met at Edmonton was a great guy, and it was definitely a frustrating time in my career. Because I don't think I was performing as well as I could have when given the opportunity, and then I wasn't getting as many opportunities as I wanted to, probably because I wasn't performing always to the best of my ability. So it was a frustrating time, but there were a lot of positives that came from it, and most of it was the off the field, the relationships that I built.
But is there anything you learned from that though that like you would take with you going forward as far as like what you could have done to improve your own performance? You know, the things you did control.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think first off, this point we talked about before is do a little bit more research beforehand in terms of the style of play.
Yeah.
But also on the field stuff, yeah, I mean, absolutely. There were plenty of times when I could have been more clinical in front of goal, or I could have held the ball up a little bit better, or or maybe played as a winger a little bit more effectively, so I got to stay in the team longer. I think there's a million different points I could have done, did things I could have done differently. But yeah, I think it was a good learning experience from that point of view. I think I had so much success at Galway, from a personal standpoint anyway, that it was you don't want to go through downs, but it did teach me kind of a lot of good lessons that I took forward.
One of the things you mentioned, I don't know if this is something that happened during the season, but you said that there was a players meeting to go to the owner about Colin. Is that a major point you wanted to discuss?
Oh yeah, I mean that was halfway through the second season, we actually had a players meeting, basically saying, do we want to go to the owner to try to get rid of Colin, because we didn't feel like he was right for the team, and we thought as players we could perform better if he wasn't there. It never happened. It never happened because people just didn't think it was the right thing to do, and I'm not even sure if it was the right thing to do. As someone who at that time wasn't in the starting 11, wasn't totally happy, but I don't even know if that's the right thing to do necessarily.
No,
it's a tough thing to do.
Level of frustration you guys had,
Yeah.
Definitely things could have been improved. So the club took it what was termed a hiatus towards after the season, and actually they did come back in the Canadian League, right? Is it still the same club, or is it?
Yeah, same owner, same club, yeah.
Okay, so actually it really was a hiatus, but they actually ended up coming back at the time it was a hiatus because of the uncertainty in the NASL, but they did come back in the Canadian Premier League. So, and it's great for the fans and the community up in Edmonton to have a club and to have, a good club. I mean, I know they didn't have the greatest season, this year, but, hopefully they'll be able to bounce back, into 2021. And, it's great for any community, but it's definitely great for that community. There were a lot of, I remember back, going back, there were a lot of like supportive things that came out with you. Like it did seem to rally behind you and get behind you, and a lot of fun experiences, which, we could be here for hours going on about that stuff. But like, it is a great community up there. So from what I can tell, I mean, not having been to Edmonton personally, but it did seem like it was a lot of fun culture around the club, and, even watching the games. So let's get into the off season then for 2017. That was the best of times, the worst of times for the two of us. Mostly for you, but I was in on your journey there. But trying to find clubs. But you were in the same position a lot of good players were in, where all of a sudden NASL's gone, not coming back, whatever, and uncertainty, and a lot of good players looking to try to find what the next steps were. So take it away. Tell us what happened.
I picked the worst year to have the worst season of my career. That's for sure. So like you said, NASL folded, and all these great players in the NASL, they're now looking for USL jobs, and these USL teams don't pay as well. And it was just, there's too many players for too little jobs. And now, luckily, with League One the season after that, the job market kind of opened up more and more opportunities for players. But so my exit meeting with Colin, he didn't say they didn't want me back, but he was like, well, we're going to wait to decide, as they said to everyone else, because they weren't sure whether the club was going to be back. They weren't sure whether the NASL was going to be back. So I said, okay.
He wasn't sure if he was going to be back.
He wasn't sure if he was going to be back.
Not against him, it was just the uncertainty of the club.
There was so much uncertainty. So there was no chance I was going back. They could offer me the world. I was not going to go back. But then in end of November, right before Thanksgiving, we got an email. I remember vividly because I thought it was so ridiculous. We got an email from Jay Ball, who was the general manager, at 1:00 or 12:59, saying like, listen, the club is going to go on hiatus. And I don't think at that point the NASL had officially ceased operations, but the club, FC Edmonton, was going to go on a hiatus. And then at 1:00 on Twitter, it was announced by FC Edmonton, hey, like the same exact thing we just got at 12:59 via email, which again, that was just the cherry on top of the cake of just, in my opinion, a poorly run club. Like at least have the decency to let the players know more than a minute, 30 seconds before the world knows. Because there was guys on that team that were on 2-year contracts. So they still had a contract for that 2018 season. I wasn't one of them, but I remember Albert Watson, he had a kid on the way. I think the kid was due in like December or whatever it was. And he had that second year on his contract. He was guaranteed second year. And the only way the contract would be voided was if the club folded or ceased or took a hiatus. So, I mean, I get that the ownership, it's his money and he can do with it as he pleases. I'm not someone that says, like, you have to do this, you have to fund us. No, it's your money. If you don't want to invest, that's fine. But I just think it could have been handled better from the standpoint of let the players know before you put it on Twitter. That's all I ask. And that didn't happen. And so from there, like, that wasn't really news to me. That didn't affect me in any way. I felt bad for guys, but it didn't affect me. And I was just reaching out. You were reaching out. Remember PJ was reaching out. Like, we were just – PJ Savage is a friend of both of ours. He's an agent. I was just trying to get a club. I mean, I knew it would be hard because of the season that I had previously, but I didn't realize it was going to be that hard. Like, borderline impossible in the U.S.
PJ was telling us at the time, it was, I didn't quite fully appreciate it. I didn't, I wasn't experienced in that field and didn't know the full, I mean, I understood what was going on and I could see it, but like, I mean, he ended up seeing guys like Daryl Fordyce and not had to sit out a season, because of his personal situation with his family, and then and Albert, guys that you mentioned, it took him a while to find that next club because of his personal situation, and a lot of players, guys' careers ended and never came back, and guys just took a while to find the next club. So, what led you ended up leaving? What was the journey to Pats, basically, which I kind of know, but
yeah. So that was the end point. I'm trying to remember exactly. I remember we reached out to tons of clubs. Some clubs were like not interested. Some said maybe preseason. Some even were like, he only scored 3 goals last year. How are we going to sign him? Along those lines. Which is fair enough. I no complaints, but that was the situation for me in the U.S. So I kind of realized that I was going to have to go abroad. And you had reached out to, what was his name? Tom Sakara?
Tom Sakara, yeah.
Yeah, so he – actually, before that, let me go backwards 1 second. I did get one offer in the U.S., and that was from Harrisburg City Islanders. Wasn't a great offer, but it was a decent enough offer that I would have taken, 100% would have taken. But they offered it to me. So Bill Becker, who was actually the guy who released me, 5 years earlier, he was the coach and he liked me, and they had offered me a contract actually in July, but Colin wouldn't let me go. July of the previous season.
Right.
So the general manager, he had left, but the general manager offered me a contract for the next season, but they hadn't hired a new coach yet. So he offered me that contract. I was like, I'm probably going to end up taking this, and that was fine. But then when they hired the new coach said, listen, we'll honor the contract, but I don't see you as like really in my plans. So what do you want to do? And I was never going to go to somewhere that the coach I wasn't in their plans. That just is not smart. Even if I had nothing, I would rather risk it for somewhere that could be good than go somewhere where I'm way behind the 8 ball to start. So that wasn't really an option. And then we reached out to Tom Sakara, who reached out to a club in Australia, the Melbourne Knights, who play in the NPL, which is the second tier behind the A-League.
Right.
And that was first. So we were kind of in negotiations. It was a pretty good offer. Like, again, it was better than Harrisburg. Like, I would have definitely gone there and probably had a hell of a time. But right around that same time, did you reach out to Liam? You tell this part of the story.
Yeah, basically really quick, because I want to keep the focus on you, but just real quick, my little role to play in this scenario was that, I'm good friends to this day with Liam Buckley, and I met him a few years back, and I at that particular juncture, like I think I might have mentioned you before, and I called him about something else. I'll if he's looking to fill a position, and if he's having a difficult time finding a player over in Ireland, that really, is at the level he wants, and he's trying to get the best players he can get in. I'll try to see if I can find somebody for him, and with there being so many good players available, I wasn't really trying to push you too hard, because I figured, I did mention you, and then I also figured he would, if he was interested, he would let me know. He knew, that you were available and looking for a club. And I might have mentioned somebody else. It might have been a different position. And then literally the next day, he called me up while I was at work, and I saw him calling. So I just went outside and I picked up the call, and he just asked me about. He was trying to find a forward, and I guess like because of our conversation the day before, like I mentioned, probably that you were looking to Australia or something, maybe, but wasn't for sure. And he kind of just figured he'd take a shot at bringing you over, and just figuring that you had done a good job in Galway, and he needed another forward, and that was basically it. And then I put you guys together.
Yeah. So then he called me shortly thereafter, and I was between those two offers in Australia and Pat's, but it really wasn't much of a decision. Financially, it was similar. I think Pat's might have been a little bit better, but the top division of League Ireland with a club like St. Pat's, who had been very successful over the previous 5 years or so, I was always going to go there. It's a better move for my career if I want to continue to kind of advance forward. If I go to Australia, it'd be a great experience, but it'd be tough to get a move to a really good league from there, at least in my view. So I decided to go to Pat's. And this is like late January, early.
The pinnacle of my career as the advocate too. By the way,
yeah.
I finally realized what I had envisioned about 5 years earlier when I was trying to pitch Liam on the idea that like there are players like yourself available, or 4 years early, whatever, but like that you were available and others that were having a hard time finding clubs. And here it is now. You're actually going to play for Liam at the same club. So
I know when you think about it like that, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
how it finally came back around, and I got to go to Pat's. And so what happened was the end of January, beginning of February. The work permit still took 2 weeks, and the season started I want to say February 17th or something. So I got to flew into Dublin on the Monday. So and the first game was on the Friday. So I had 4 days before I had zero preseason. Just the way things worked out timing wise. But Liam still put me in the first game. I played the last 20, 30 minutes of the first game, came on as a sub against Cork. And then for the first 6 or so games, I came on as a sub every week. Didn't stand out particularly, didn't do anything bad or good. I didn't really think. But actually there was one game.
You were also, not to jump in, but just for context for everybody to understand, you're also going over there as playing. You were playing as a 9, or were you playing? So you're coming in for Christy Fagan, who at the time was nearing the end of his career, but Christy Fagan was a club legend, League Ireland legend, and had some tremendous years with that club, and it played come through the Manchester United system as well. So I mean easily had played at a high level, highly regarded player. So.
Christy,
pretty stiff competition for you.
Yeah, in terms of just CV or resume, Christy was the best striker that I played with or alongside or behind, I guess you could say. But Christy had an excellent career. That year, his body was kind of falling off. He just wasn't quite the same player. But like you said, he's a club legend, great guy too, tremendous guy. So I was behind him at first, and then we were the first few games we really struggled. We didn't score many goals. We weren't really good. So there's actually a funny story. I don't know if I ever even told you this. So it was 6 games into the year, and Liam still at that point, I hadn't gotten my car yet. So Liam would pick me up at my apartment, and the apartment was owned by Garrett Kelleher, the owner. So I'm walking out of the apartment. Liam says, I'm here, whatever. So I walk out of the apartment, and in the lobby area or the mail room area of the the bigger apartment, just outside my room, is Garrett. So I'm and I never met him before, but I knew what he looked like. And I was like, hey, I know you. And he introduced himself, and he's like, hey, blah, blah, blah. I'm the owner of the club. And I already knew all this stuff. And he's like, what, you have training, whatever? I was like, yeah, Liam's actually, he's picking me up right now. So we walk out of the car together. And we had a little bit of conversation before this, a little small talk. I did not say these words at all, but so he goes to Liam as I'm getting in the car. He's like, Liam, is Jake going to start this Friday? And Liam's like, we'll see, whatever, we'll see. And Garrett goes, well, Jake said he can't score goals from the bench. I did not say that to him, for the record, Liam, if you're listening. That is not the conversation that was had. But it was very funny. I just got into the car. I was like, so this is the owner. This is his boss saying this in front of me. I was like, this is awkward. And Garrett he's a very good businessman. He's in New York, there's a big building up in Chicago that he was in charge of building.
Yeah.
He's a very successful guy, and he's tall guy. He's kind of imposing. And for him to say that to Liam in front of me I was just like, oh my God.
I know. I know Liam pretty well. I mean, in all honesty, I mean, I think that would have been just like kind of the banter between the two of them. I mean, I know for you at the moment it was a bit awkward, but like, that's kind of the Irish way, and that's the banter, and
Yeah.
I think especially at that time, that's kind of how they would, it's a small, as I'm sure you'll tell us about, it's a small group of people over there doing, running St. Pat's, and so it's not like a club like Liverpool or Manchester United or something where like that kind of thing would be a little more, Liam and Garrett would be in contact quite frequently, and I'm sure there's part of the banter between the two of them, but like
Okay.
I don't think if anybody who's not listening and is not really I don't think it was like I'm trying to think of like maniacal owner like Jerry Jones or something like that, or the Dallas Cowboys, or Merrill Paulson, maybe or something like that, like telling his coach like what to do and how to coach or anything like that. Liam is very much his own man, and nobody is telling Liam, I know this, so I know well, nobody's telling Liam who to play, and like they may offer suggestions, but I'm sure Garrett might have had a little bits and pieces to say, but Liam will make the decisions. So,
well, you're probably right, but that Friday night was my first start, so.
Well, time may come, or maybe I'm wrong.
So
I
mean,
think I am, but well, anyway, you got the start.
Yeah. So we got the start. We beat Limerick in my first start, and we actually had a really good run of form for maybe 2 months. And I was playing pretty much week in, week out as the number 9. Maybe like 1 or 2 games I didn't start, or I played on the wing, but for the most part I was the number 9, and like I was happy. I thought we were playing well, but I always knew like Liam wants a striker who is really going to link play and get the number 10. He was always telling me like, I want you to get shots for my midfielders. That was something he would regularly tell me. And that is not, I'm more of like on the shoulder. So, I mean, I was definitely trying to kind of fit into his system. And I think we had success kind of playing more the way that I naturally play, but I also see why he wanted, because he had so much success. He's won the league, he's won the FA Cup, he's won 2 EA Sports Cup. So he wanted that striker that could really link play, get his midfielders involved. And I can do that to some extent, but I'm more of a guy that kind of lives on the shoulder and waits for the ball to go in behind for me to get shots on frame and stuff like that. So, I mean, I always knew that I wasn't necessarily his dream striker. I respect Liam immensely. But during that period, I knew like I need to keep scoring and we need to keep playing well, or there's going to be very little kind of leeway in terms of staying into the team.
Mm-hmm. And what were some of besides the Garrett Kelleher apartment in Balbriggan? Was it Balbriggan? No. Where was it? Oh, geez, I'm trying to think of Dublin. What part of Dublin were you in? Ballsbridge?
Oh yeah, Ballsbridge, yeah.
Yeah. So you're in a nice area of I don't know why I'm saying Balbriggan because it's late at night, but Ballsbridge, nice apartment, and then you ended up with a BMW.
Yes, I did. It was the nicest setup that I had at any club. Like it was a smallish studio apartment, but I was right in the heart of Dublin. I had this car that I could go anywhere I wanted. I could drive to training, but then also on the weekend I can drive up the coast. There's so many nice places, like Malahide, where your sister's from. There's Howth, and then there's like just down the other way, there's a lot of like nature and the Wicklow Mountains and stuff like that. There's so much to do. I absolutely love Dublin. Favorite place that I've lived. Sorry, Greenville. Sorry, everywhere else. Dublin's number one. I don't think I could live there for my entire life. Yeah. Just because I would want to live in Ireland my whole life. But Dublin was amazing. I was 20. Yeah, and I had so many friends during that time that visited throughout that year. Yeah. So I got to, like, you came over. Yep. And we saw each other. Then other friends, I have a friend from Germany came over, and then actually my girlfriend now came over, and she didn't come to see me, but we connected that way as well. And there's so many. There were other people too. There's Ben Fisk, who was with me at FC Edmonton. He was playing at Derry, so he came to Dublin.
My cousin came to see you.
What's that?
Did my cousin come to see you?
Your cousin came too. Yeah, your cousin came.
Well, he came to see. He came when I was there, but he came on his own with his. Yeah. But he came with his friend from work after you played. You got to play Newcastle United.
Yeah. We played Newcastle, like the first team for Newcastle, all the first team players with Newcastle. DeAndre Yedlin. Who else was on that team? There's so many more. How am I not free? What's the midfielder? I'm blanking. I'm under pressure, Dave. I'm trying to name names, but.
I'm trying to think back now.
John Joe Shelby is who I'm thinking of. They had
Alan Shearer.
Alan Shearer. I am blanking on names. I'm really bad right now. But they had, it was their whole first team.
Rafa Benitez was the manager.
Yeah, Rafa Benitez was the manager. And when actually after the game, all the guys or all the fans wanted to get a picture with him. No one really cared about the players at that time. Good. I mean, he's a legend. I understand it, but also
it was the Newcastle team at that time. You know, it was just I have to look back to see now like what.
Carl Darlow was the keeper.
John Joe Shelby, right? You know, you had Jose Perez.
Yeah, Jose Perez. The left-footed striker, what's his name?
Dwight Gale.
Yeah, Dwight Gale. There was another left-footed guy that scored on us. Whatever. There's a lot of names. You can go through them.
Kieran Clark would have been a big name for the Irish fans, right? Because he would have been Irish national team player playing against you guys. And Robbie Elliott, goalkeeper, was Irish national team player as well. And I mean, it wasn't the most legendary Newcastle United team, but I mean, there were some good players in the team, and then also it's Newcastle United, so you know, legendary club from England. And my cousin was there with, I mean, a cousin, a diehard, you know, Liverpool Scouser in and out, Liverpool FC, but you know, his friend was a Newcastle supporter, and he just wanted to have lunch and ask you about the guys from Newcastle, right?
Yeah, that was basically it. We just had lunch and talked about the game. I remembered more about the game back then than I do tonight, obviously. But it's my old age. I'm forgetting.
Yeah,
but it was sick. Like, Richmond is a beautiful place, as we talked about on the Vinny episode, and it was a sellout, like completely sold out. Newcastle fans were behind one of the goals. It was just such a cool. I mean, I played the first 45. We kind of did a split team as well. It was just it's playing in those games, like when we played against Trent Alexander-Arnold with Liverpool at Galway. Just playing those games against these massive names is just so cool. And being on the same field as them, and these guys are worth like 50 million, 100 million, and we're sharing the same field, and they're obviously better. I mean, their quality is unbelievable, but we never lose the game 8-0. Like, we lost to Newcastle 2-0. Liverpool was more of a youth team, but we beat them. And like, even with Edmonton, we played Stoke, we played Newcastle, we played Burnley, and Burnley had like Sam Vogt was on the field, Tarkowski, James Tarkowski. They had Newcastle had Shea Given. There's just so many games that I played through the years with these big names, and it's one of the coolest parts about being a pro at my level is these special games where you get to go and you get to play against these guys that you watch on the Saturday morning, and then you're like, I'm going up against Tarkowski, and there's pictures of me and Tarkowski, and he's like massive and like two of my bodies. But I mean, you see why he plays week in, week out in the Premier League. Right. But on that day, I think we lost to Burnley like 2-1. So it's not so ridiculous, and it's not like the U.S. women's team playing Thailand. It's definitely not like that. it's the gap is a lot smaller.
Yeah. So, and then also, it wasn't the greatest season for Pats, but you got to play with some amazing, players over there at that time. I mean, like guys like Christie that were really good League Ireland players, really good players for Pats, legends, guys that were coming near the end of their career, but must have been a lot of fun playing with guys like Conan Byrne, Ian Birmingham, Killian Brennan, guys that have been there for a long time, Brendan Clark.
Yep.
I'm sorry, who else did you say?
Oh, I was gonna say Owen Garvin, who had played in the championship for like 15 years too, was on our team. Like we had a lot of Simon Madden, who was a big League Ireland. Like we had a lot of very good players. I just think we were too old. I think if that side was 3 years prior, we challenged for the league, as a lot of them did with Pats, and a lot of them won the league back in 2013 with a lot of those same players. But I just think we were a little too old. All the players were just a little bit past it. Not all, but most of the players were a little bit past it. We did have some really good young players in the team. Lee Desmond, Jamie Lennon, Dara Markey. Thomas Byrne was very talented, but not always the most level-headed player.
Kevin Toner just came back from Villa.
Kevin Toner as well. Yeah, he played first-team games with Aston Villa. So, yeah, we had a very good team.
Connor Clifford,
yeah, him too. Yeah, it was a very good team. We were just
really good player. At youth level, just never was able to realize the.
Yeah, he was with Chelsea, I believe.
Right.
He was with Chelsea, right? Yeah. So yeah, we had a good squad. We were just a little old, and we underperformed a little bit. We ended up finishing 5th, but because of whatever, basically loopholes, we ended up making Europe, the Europa League. And we made the Leinster Senior Cup final, which is a very small cup. We lost on penalties. And yeah, the main 2 cups, the EA Sports Cup and the FAI Cup. The EA Sports Cup we lost on penalties, and the FAI Cup we lost. We were down 1-0 the way to Derry, and we missed a penalty. So it was not the greatest year. It was okay. That's all it was. I thought I scored a decent amount of goals. I was happy enough with it. It was just okay. It was nothing spectacular, nothing in terms of on the field. There's no like great story or great disappointment. It was a good year, and coming off the back of Edmonton, I was more than happy to score in double digits and just kind of get my career back on track.
Yeah, and I kind of just personally was like a little frustrated with some of the feedback I think got for your season over there, because I felt like for maybe you weren't the type of striker Liam was looking for, and fair play, happens all the time, and but I just felt like when I was the games I saw, and then as I was following along, you gave really good performances in and out, and for the amount of League of Ireland, it's typically not a high scoring league. The players often don't get really high goal totals, and it's I thought for the amount of minutes you played, considering the fact that you had a fair number of starts, but then you were so much in and out of the team, I thought you scored a fair number of goals, and if they decided to move on, fair play, move on to another striker, it happens all the time, but I think the one thing that kind of frustrated me was that Liam ended up getting let go, leaving, whatever, and then when Harry Kennedy came in and took over, and didn't really follow the communication. But the thing that got me more than anything was that when he did the interview on the club website, which was well publicized, I'm not going to get out to criticize people, but I kind of just felt like when he signed Gary Shaw, I think it was, and good player, nothing against Gary Shaw, but it just when Harry was just saying well, we finally got a proper striker, and I just felt like for you, a little bit of a dig towards you, towards the other guys too, not just you, because you had Christie, you had who may have been looking to finish up, maybe looking to continue, and then Achille Champion, I don't know how you pronounce.
Yeah.
You got the French striker. But I think you were one of the guys that they were looking to, and I just nothing really don't really have much of a feeling either way regarding Harry Kennedy, but it just thought that was unnecessary, and I thought I guess but it probably reflected sort of the consensus within the diehard League Ireland folks, the managers, that weren't quite up to a higher level. But I thought you had a fairly good season for Pats, and then put you in another team, with a different style, and I think you could do quite well.
Well, I mean, I think you just look at Galway. I think that was just a team with a different style, and I clearly did well. I mean, I think I did well with Pats as well. I just think the only difference, Pats was a little bit better team, yes, but the difference was Tommy would play me week in, week out. And like I talked about in part one, he showed so much faith in me. Yeah. And when a manager shows that much faith in you, if you're a good enough player, you'll have a bad game. But if he has faith, the next week or the week after, you'll have a good game. And then people will be talking about that. So, I mean, there's 22 players in a squad. All of them are quality at the professional level. So that's natural. So you're not always going to have managers that completely agree with you. So you have to seize your opportunities when you get them. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
How did it compare with when he went into Talent to play Shamrock Rovers, up to Oriel Park, played Dundalk? How did it feel going in there with Pats versus Galway?
It was a lot different. Shamrock Rovers, I mean, we had a really good traveling support, but the Rovers it's so far away from the pitch. It's a very nice stadium, but the crowd is farther away from the pitch. So it doesn't feel like League of Ireland. It feels like kind of like a more professional level. It's a very nice stadium. Whereas at Bows and Dundalk, and even when we're home at Pats, against these Shamrock Rovers or Bows, it was packed. It was almost sold out, and the atmosphere was unbelievable. I wouldn't be able to tell you if there's 25,000 or 5,000, because it just felt like they were on top of you, screaming, cursing, drunk. It was all that, and especially when I remember we were playing Shamrock Rovers at home, so in Richmond, and we were up 1-0, and Killian Brennan had a penalty in the 90th in stoppage time, and he scores it, and he's a former Shamrock Rovers guy, and he goes and celebrates, and the away fans are right up behind that goal where he scored on it. He scores, he just goes, and he goes, did he do this? I think he did this. He just stood there and looked at him, and he's getting beer cans thrown at him, bottle caps. I mean, that's the atmosphere that you're dealing with. It's really, I love it.
Well, they called him Killer for a reason,
Yeah, he was a guy that loved that. He loved to take the piss, and he loved to rile people up. He had a great career.
No, but I was kind of thinking more of how did you feel when in the Pats team going in, feeling like you could get a result? Was there a feeling that you had a better chance of getting a result?
Oh, yes.
With Galway?
Yes, definitely. Against Bows with Galway, we had success. Against Shamrock Rovers, I don't think we ever even got a draw.
Whereas, I was thinking Dundalk and Shamrock.
Yeah, and Dundalk was. I don't think we had success against Dundalk at Pats. I'm trying to remember. We may have gotten I think we got 2 draws actually. 2 out of 3 games we drew. So yeah, I guess we did. It was because we were a top 5 club at Pats, whereas Galway was towards the bottom, just fighting relegation. There was definitely a difference, and we got a win against Shamrock Rovers. One win against Shamrock Rovers with Pats. We beat Bows. There was definitely that feeling. Even those results that we had, we were underperforming. Whereas at Galway, if we would have gotten those results, it'd be happy days. Thank you. Let's get on the bus. So there was it was a higher level of expectation. Going into the season, the goal was to make Europe. And yes, we made Europe, but we finished 5th. So we ended up getting what we wanted, but we wanted to finish 3rd or 4th at the bare minimum. Even though the year before they had finished 10th, or they had just missed. They had actually almost gotten relegated the year before. So it was a big increase in terms of our point total.
Right. So now you've kind of put the Edmonton years sort of behind you. The down year, and now you had your Pats, but change in manager towards the end of the season. and probably even if Liam had still been there, probably not looking to go back, for 2018. So what was that?
2019.
Geez, yeah, I'm off by my years. Sorry. And so what was the next step now that led you toward Greenville?
So I will say, so Gerald O'Brien took over as the interim manager the last 5 games when Liam got sacked. I think he rated me very highly. I could be wrong. I mean, I started every game when he took over. If they would have given the job to him, I think I would have considered staying, and I think he may have had interest. But just with Harry taking the job, he didn't have any interest. So at that point, the options were I was looking to come back to the U.S. I didn't know what else in Europe I could really get right away. I was looking into Scandinavia, but Scandinavia seems to be later in terms of signing players. So initially my options were I believe I could have got back to Galway, but I feel like that option seems to be on the table every year, potentially going back. I'm toying with that idea. But in the U.S., my options
every year where you've been eligible.
Yes, exactly.
Because there were a couple of years where you weren't. So the year.
Yeah, that's true. I had 2-year contracts or whatever.
Yeah.
So there was a USL 1 team. Should we name the team, the first team, or no? Should we leave them out?
Sure.
All right. Well, the first team that reached out to me was Tormenta, and the coach John Migliarese at the time, he reached out. He's like, "We're interested in bringing you over." I think you had sent emails to USL teams, and that's what generated that interest. I would assume. Yeah. I don't remember exactly. So he called me. My impression of it was it felt more like a college setup. Just because I think it was like 4 guys in an apartment. They were getting breakfast and lunch and dinner all served to them, like, which is fine, but I just view that as more like PDL or college, and it just put me off. And then a week later, John Harkes reaches out to me and on FaceTime. So I see John Harkes on FaceTime on my phone. I'm sitting in my apartment in Dublin. I'm like, what up, John Harkes? How you doing? How
did John get your number?
we were going to get to that.
Okay.
But so I was going to let you tell that side of the story.
But besides it being out there and anybody can Google, that's a different story.
Yeah. So our first conversation was just in Dublin. He reached out. I was like, "Hey, hi, John Harkes. How you doing?" And we just had that initial conversation. But how I got in contact with John Harkes is probably a more interesting story. So you want to take that one for us?
Yeah. So I'm emailing, clubs here, and again, I'm still being the advocate. I'm not an agent. Although now, I mean, in all honesty, I am, I have been considering it, but doing some work in that area, and to be perfectly clear. But I've never been an agent, never accepted any money, never did anything. So other than a couple of J. Keegan jerseys from various years, but so when the league opened up, I remember when we talked about it, that we thought it might be an opportunity, and with all these new clubs in USL, new division, or in some senses it's not really new, it's just bringing back that second professional division that they had many years ago. And so I reached out to Chris Lewis at Greenville, and I guess he was familiar with you from some kind of connection with Binghamton. I think he was working up there when you were playing up there, and he put me in touch with John, and I actually got to talk to John Harkes before you. Once again, John Harkes gives me a phone call while I'm at work, trying to do my work, and I got to run outside, take the phone call. And it just so happens to be, former U.S. national team legend and captain, and guy, he's a little bit older than me. I'm 46. He's a little bit older, but guy I'm used to never met. Used to watching on TV, and so I'm talking to John Harkes about Jake Keegan, and here I am, having and I remember him saying you seem interested. You had a nose for goal. Was one of the things he said. You seem to have a nose for goal, and he's intrigued that you were playing in Ireland, and I remember he was like intrigued about like your games and if there was like a live feed of the games. And of course, at the time, you know, with League of Ireland, there's still, it's hard to get a live feed, but occasionally you can. But like some of the games you guys were playing towards the end there, and he was trying to catch some of the games just to kind of see how you were doing. And but yeah, I gave him your number, and then you know you guys took it from there, and lo and behold, you became, what was it, the second signing in the Greenville Triumph history.
Yep, right behind Tyler Pollock, the legend himself. But yeah, the negotiations went really smoothly. I was probably always going to, once John reached out and made the initial offer, I was probably always going to sign there. We tweaked a few things here and there, but I was happy to go. I thought going to Greenville, John pitched it very well, and in fairness, it was very accurate to how it's played out. He was like, one of the questions that I asked him was, is this going to be a developmental team? Because a lot of USL teams sign young players, and they want, the first priority is to develop the players, which fair enough if that's the goal, but I didn't want to go to one of those teams. I had no interest in that. I wanted to go to a team that was going to be at the top of the league, winning the league. And John was like, no, we obviously want to develop players. That's important for us, but we want to win the league, and we want to be the best team in the league. So what he pitched is very accurate. I think they've taken care of us very well here. But yeah, signed there and then just waited till preseason. Had that off season. It was the earliest I signed probably ever. Aside from when I had like 2-year deals or option contracts, but it was the first like long off season where I signed just in November right away. Knew what I was going to do, so I had that off season to just kind of focus on training, focus on whatever else I had to do, and not worry about like that year when the NASL folded. That whole off season, I couldn't take a breath. Couldn't take a breath until February 1st or whenever I signed, and even then I couldn't take a breath because preseason started in 16 days. So it was that was a nice time.
That was a major goal, I think, for both. You know, obviously for you, but like you know, I mean, I think that was something we had discussed. You know, was like really trying to find, you know, and I mean, you know, it's your career, it's your decision, your life, you know. So you know, I just try to, you know, I think we were both in the same mindset, but I just tried to say like, you know, if you could get an offer, you know, that seemed reasonable fairly early, like give yourself the chance to have that peace of mind and prepare for your season rather than, you know, having to stress about trying to find which club you're going to go to. So, and, you know, John is, you know, I mean, I only spoke to him once or twice, but I mean, he is very charismatic. You know, it's really cool talking to him just as a soccer fan, you know, but, you know, I wasn't like, I mean, it was as close to like starstruck as I might get, because I don't really get starstruck, or, you know, like too in awe. I mean, you know, it's a little cool, like, you know, talking to John, or like, you know, when it covered some games, you know, with like the Red Bulls and going to see like Thierry Henry, you know, but I don't get really starstruck, but it's just kind of like, wow, you know, there's the guy you see on TV in front of you. It is a little bit of a different moment, but, you know, coming from like a healthcare background and from a hospital background and seeing a lot of crazy things happen, like, you know, every single day, you know, especially when I'm over there and involved with it, you know, it's like the starstruck thing starts to go, you know, and also getting older, it you know, minimizes, but, you know, back to you, but, you know, but yeah, so John definitely has a good way about him. And, you know, I thought it was a great fit, you know, and I was excited for you that you may get a chance to go there, new club, new city, new opportunity, fresh start for you. And seemed like a really cool project, and for the USL club and USL and the community, and then to play for John, I thought would be really good. Open some doors maybe to next level after you put in a year or two there. So
yeah, it honestly, it's played out very well. As we talked, I guess we can go on to how it played out over these last 2 years. And the first year, we signed a lot of like college players, like a lot of even Division II college players, and nothing against Division II, but we had a very young squad, and we had kind of a core group of older players. A lot of them came from FC Cincinnati. Tyler Pollock, when John was the coach at FC Cincinnati at one point, so we had Tyler Pollock, Evan Lee, Dallas J. Aaron Walker, Omar Muhammad. I think that's it. I think there was those 5 from FC Cincinnati, and then I was there, who was another one of the experienced players. We had Cole Seiler, who had played in MLS. We had Kevin Politz, who had played in MLS. So we had a very good core group of players, and then kind of the bench was filled in by either journeyman type like guys or just young players out of college. So that first we had a lot of learning to do. Where we were from day one of preseason to day one of the regular season away to Tormenta in the first game of League One to where we ended up being halfway through the year and towards the end of the year was night and day. We improved so much. The second game was awesome. It was one of my favorite memories here at Greenville. We played Lansing, first home game, and we went down 1-0. We didn't score the first week. We lost 1-0, and then in the second half, I got a goal, equalized 1-1 right in front of our away section, our supporter section, the Reedy River Riot. Place went crazy. We just ran back to half field. We wanted to get the winner, and when we ended up getting it through Kevin Politz on a header, probably an 80-something minute. So that night was sold out. It was Greenville had arrived. Soccer had arrived in Greenville, and Greenville had arrived in the League One landscape. And that was definitely a special moment in my career, for sure. Just because when you start something new and you're building from scratch, it's not always going to be easy, but those first moments of success, you definitely remember. And then even the next week, we had another home game. We won 1-0 against Chattanooga, and I scored again. So it was actually a really good start. But then we fell off a little bit. We were win one, lose one, tie one. We're still inconsistent for maybe till July. We were inconsistent. We were learning. We had a lot of young players. We hadn't played together as a team before. But I think Alex and John and Ryan Mackey, our strength and conditioning coach, the staff did an excellent job of keeping us just not letting us get too down. We kept saying, by the end of the season, we'll be at the top of the league. And we kept saying it, and then we kept doing video, and we kept repeating that, even when we lose. And there was a point at the end of June, I don't remember the exact numbers, but League One did this, playoff prediction or, playoff odds. And we were, 3% or 4% of getting in the playoffs. The top 4 teams made it out of 12. And we were probably 10th place, or maybe 9th place, maybe not 10th. But and we just kept winning. In July, we went away to North Texas, the team at the top of the league. We beat them 4-0. Then we beat Tormenta, who was second in the league. We beat them 1-0. Then we beat Toronto, and we just went on this run of I want to say maybe out of 10 games, we lost 1, and that was in July and August, and we were flying. I thought we were going to win the league, for sure. And then, unfortunately for me, we were away to Madison. We were up 1-0. I want to say 89th minute, went in for a tackle, hurt my foot. I didn't know exactly what happened at the time. I knew it wasn't great, but we didn't have any subs left. So I just hopped around for the last 5 minutes. We ended up beating Madison away, which Madison was at that time probably 3rd in the league. They ended up finishing 4th, and they made the playoffs. So that was another massive win for us. And I don't think anybody realized that I had broken my foot at the time. I didn't know for sure either. But everybody's celebrating in the locker room. I think everybody thought it cramped up. And it was the first injury I've ever had, ever. So first time I've ever missed games, the only time I've ever missed a game through injury from 5 years old to whatever, 30 that I am now. So I missed the last 6 games of the regular season.
That happens, Jake. You're getting old,
Before that point, I honestly had this mindset that I was invincible, not invincible from the sense of I couldn't be beaten or I was the best striker in the world, but I thought I was invincible in the sense of you can do whatever you want to me, but I can still play. I'm still be fit enough to play in the game. And that's obviously wrong, but that was my mindset at the time. I still have this saying. I think availability is the best ability. And I truly believe that. I think there's so many great players out there who get injured, who pick up a hamstring injury every other week, or a niggle here, niggle there, they're not available. So I took so much pride. I was might not be the best goal scorer, might not be the best target man, might not be the strongest or the fastest or whatever, but I will be available every week if you want to pick me. And I took so much pride in that. So getting that injury, and it was a serious one, obviously. It was a Jones fracture, which is probably the worst way to break your foot because there's so little blood flow into the area for healing. And at that period of the last 6 games of the season, and then we still made the playoffs. I think we went 3-3 the last 6 games, made the playoffs, beat Lansing away in the first playoff game, and then we ended up losing the final to North Texas. And those 8 games were, oh my goodness, they were torture every week because I love the guys. I want to see them do well, but at the same time, when they do well, you're like, fuck, I want to be a part of this. And then when they lose, like in the final especially, we outplayed them by so much. We talked about Caesar about it on one of the podcasts, and I feel like if I was fit, I would have at least scored 1. There were so many chances in that game, and we lost 1-0. And from like the games when we lose, I'm like, I could have made a difference. The games when we win, I'm like, missing out on this. This is awesome. So it was just such a tough period of my life for sure. Those last 8 games.
Who are you? The heck with you and your problems. I had finally had a trip planned down to go see you play in Greenville, and I ended up canceling. I think we were gonna try to squeeze in like an MLS game the next night or something. I think that Atlanta or somebody were playing home or something. Like we were trying to figure out how to go get tickets, and then you go and get injured, and I'm like, I'm not gonna go on about myself too much because it's about your story, but I missed a couple of like vacations and stuff like that. And like, I was actually legitimately pissed. Not at you, but
I was pissed too. So you can be pissed at me. That's fair. I was pissed. I wanted to go to the Atlanta game too. I was excited to have you come, but I still haven't been to the Atlanta United game, Atlanta United Stadium, when they have 70,000 people. I mean, in MLS, and we're only 2 hours from there. And I was planning on going as well. I mean, I was pissed about the whole situation.
Then I'm thinking at the back of my head, like, oh well, I'll just go next year to go see Jake.
Yeah, then there's a pandemic instead. Unbelievable, but yeah, it was a tough time for sure. But I don't want to feel or sound like I'm complaining because I have been very lucky with injuries.
It's frustrating
through the years, but it was very frustrating because I felt like at the time I got injured, I was 1 goal away from the Golden Boot. 1 goal behind. We had just won. I think we had won 5 of 6 and tied the other one. We were on a great run of form. I was scoring a lot of goals in that run, and I just felt like we were just going to keep kicking on, and I thought we were going to win the league. Now we still, even without me, like I thought we outplayed North Texas in the final, so we still could have. But it was just very frustrating that I couldn't be a part of it and couldn't make a difference in the final.
So, but then we kind of went through. I think I just want to little jump in there. Email to Carlos Bocanegra. I attached Keegan CV. Just wanted to considerable to sign him. Carlos Bocanegra from Atlanta United, former U.S. No thanks.
Was that for the second team?
Yeah, for Atlanta United's USL team. For anything basically. Whatever you want to offer. Like this was in. Well, this is 2018. 2018. So. Yeah, but I mean, we would have taken like any offer at that point, right? Because like that was the year you went to Pat, so it was like, please, like those are the kinds of emails like I've sent out to like, and like that was actually a response,
most just ignore you, but it's obviously worked over the years. Like if we go through the line, like the German club that I signed with, you connected me with the agent. When I signed with Galway, you connected me with Liam, who then connected me with Tommy Dunn, got me signed. Yeah. Edmonton, you had nothing to do with you really, but I guess you connected me to the agent, so we won't blame you for Edmonton.
I connected to Axel.
Yeah, you connected me to Axel, so you still played a part in that. Then I go to Pat's, which is directly you. You were the agent basically, and then same with Greenville. You were an agent more or less, and you connected me with Chris Lewis, who then connected with John Harkes and.
Well, Pats was me too, but like, but you just acted as you acted as your own.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like you open things up, and then I take it from there. But it is crazy.
I think it is crazy, but I think one thing that's affected your career, and I think it's like something for guys your generation, and I think I really realized this in that off season after the second Edmonton season when the NASL folded, and especially at that time was that USL at that time was really almost like a professional U23 league in a certain sense, because so many of the clubs, I kind of pointed out the Atlanta United email for Carlos Bocanegra because it's Carlos Bocanegra, but like you can almost stratify the clubs into two different groups, and like you do have your clubs, like some of the ones you mentioned, Harrisburg are gone now, but Nashville, or not Nashville, but Phoenix Rising, OK City, Energy, clubs that are standalones, that I don't, may have, and not now. They don't have the MLS affiliations, but then you have all of the other, like Greenville, or standalone club. But especially at that time, a lot of the clubs, like their purpose was to, be like a feeder team for the MLS teams, with the reserve teams, and now the MLS is doing their own reserve league. I think it's a good thing for U.S. Soccer to have USL be just a standalone league, and to just have more of variation within the players, that you're not just having all young players. I think it's okay to a certain extent, but when you have a league like that, guys that are not U23, that are 23 and older, guys still do develop, at those ages. So guys do progress, and you're kind of wiping that out, and I mean, like Jamie Vardy is a bit of an extreme example, but you do have players that progress and advance with their career, and especially here in MLS, I think we're not the English Premier League, so like you could see more movement of guys from USL up to MLS. As much as you see coming down, you could see more movement of guys going up. You do see some, but it's gotten fewer and fewer and far between. But I think if there was more of that, as the league grows, the soccer grows, and these are some things we've hit on in some of the interviews with guys like John Hackworth we just talked with. As soccer continues to grow, you'll have more of a place for guys that are just a good professional player who's not is 25, 28, whatever, and is still developing. And I almost kind of feel like as a striker, and you're still young, you had you've been healthy, got a lot left. We still could see the best of Jay Keegan, which may or may not happen. We don't know. Time will tell. But there's still potential, I think, for yourself at 31, 32, 33, 34, even, to be the best you've ever been. Where you're fitter, as fit as you've ever been, and matching, the composure, the sharpness, and everything. And it's not like it's not wishful thinking. I mean, we've seen it before. In soccer with players, from throughout Europe and in South America and bigger markets that we've been able to see quite a bit of, where you do see guys continue playing at a high level and sometimes even almost get better as they get older. So it wouldn't shock me. I mean, even like let's look at a Brian McBride. Like there's an example of a guy who got better as he got older and played well into his 30s. I mean, I'm not trying to say you're Brian McBride, but it still could happen at your level, and you could rise up and play, some of your best years. So especially with a goal scorer, it's like, that's such a precious commodity, and a guy who's banging in goals. I mean, there's been tons of guys that have played in USL well into the 30s. There was a forward even for Richmond who ended up finally retiring when he was like late 30s a couple years ago.
It was Charlotte Independence.
Was consistent.
It was Charlotte Independence. It was the striker.
No, it was a guy from Richmond too, I think. Richard
was there?
Yeah. I remember when I was talking with Lee Calishaw about, I don't know if it was about you so much as it was more about Danny Bedoya at the time, and before he got with NYC. And so I remember talking with him, and I remember there was a forward on their team, and I think he ended up retiring. But yeah, he played well into his career. So um, so anyway, so that's just my 2 cents, and maybe a good way of leading into. I don't know if you're finished talking about Greenville, or if you want to lead into what's next.
Well, before we lead into that, we have to at least cover the title-winning season, the greatest season of them all. We have to just touch on it. But yeah, I mean, this 2020 season was crazy. Just in terms of the pandemic and having the season delayed, and then the quarantine training and all that different stuff. I mean, we talked a bit about it in the Caesar in Dallas episode. But this year, the difference between this year and last year was the quality, like the depth in the squad and the maturity levels in the squad were incredible. And top to bottom, we had guys that could start in any position. And I think from week 1 to we had 16 games. We were top of the league every week. We never dropped from that first position. And I think we were well deserving of the title. I think it was what happened in the final in terms of Omaha having the positive cases in the final getting canceled was definitely unfortunate for them, and disappointing from the Greenville community as a whole, because we were going to host the final, and that would have been a great night, and it would have been a COVID sellout, so a 50% capacity. But I think we're worthy champions. I think we definitely deserve the title, and it's to win a title on the professional level is a huge accomplishment, no matter how it happens. So I'll definitely always look back on this year with a lot of pride.
Well, I think personally as well, when you touch on, the team from this year, I think, and the depth, I think that shows a lot. I'm such a stats guy, and, I think when you see that, most of the squad, the 18 or 20 guys that, played the most minutes probably or whatever, you do see where, I was just looking it up. You got player of the week at one point, in July, and then, later on to the season, you were starting to even come off the bench a bit, and then, and then you were starting and you were playing a slightly different position, you were playing more as a 10, and, other guys as well, like Omar played more last year, Omar, who we had on, previously played more in, last season starting, and this year more competition for places. So, I mean, that's just a sign of a really good squad, a really good team. And, I thought you guys, to the level of where you guys are at, in USL League One, some of the games, I thought some of the games were quite good. I thought the level was quite good, I think you've mentioned that you made the same point too, that, you thought that you guys could compete, with some of the teams in the championship. And I think that's without question. I think if you guys were in the championship, I think you'd definitely be a competitive team, and maybe even with 1 or 2 additions, but, it's just, I really, thought it's a fun level to watch. It's definitely something. Hopefully, it's a trend that continues to grow, and in this country with clubs in the USL. Hopefully, we get one. We have Queensborough come to New York, but for years we've had Long Island Rough Riders that were rumored to go back to the professional level, and I don't know if that's going to be on the table anytime soon. But it'd be awesome. I'd love to go to see a USL League One game, right here on Long Island, or even for folks upstate, or not upstate, but a little further north of the city, Westchester or Kingston Southgate or whoever it is, so we'll have Queensborough, but
that would be awesome.
I don't know where they're going to play. Yeah. Queensborough will be cool, but going to the Cosmos games at Hofstra was for somebody who lives in Long Island was just so nice. Just to not have to drive so far to go see a game. It's like a little bit closer to what it feels like in Europe.
Yeah, I would love if there was a championship or League One team on Long Island, and there was one in a little bit upstate. I remember the Syracuse Salty Dogs were, I don't know what they were, like A-League at the time, but there was a team up there and they got good support. So I definitely think, and even FC Buffalo, who is in the NPSL, they get good support. Kingston Stockade, who is kind of closer to where I am, maybe an hour and a half from the city, they also get good support. Like, I think there's a lot of markets within New York that are just very untouched, and it's the only championship team or USL team in general right now before Queensborough is Red Bull 2, and that's a club that's only for development. So it's, from a player's point of view, like, I would love it if there's a Queensborough, but then there's also a couple more that I could go and then play in my home state as I get older. Maybe obviously not next year, but as I get a little bit older, maybe settle down in my home state and play. It would give me an opportunity to possibly settle down in a place and play for the last, like you talk about, for 34, 35, and then transition into whatever is next. That, I mean, that, as a player, that would be the ideal situation. Is it going to happen? Who knows? But you would love that. I would love that.
I also got to mention. I also got to mention too the, it'd be quite a distance away, but Rochester Rhinos, like, if they were ever to come back, which has been rumored, having had the opportunity to go up there and see a game with Lansdowne boys, now Lansdowne Yonkers, but in the U.S. Open Cup, was an absolutely phenomenal experience as a soccer fan. And unfortunately, there wasn't a huge crowd at the game, but there was a decent number of supporters there, and I mean, they absolutely loved Lansdowne boys. At the time, they really had more. They still have a few Irish guys in the team, but like, they had a bit more of a core of the Irish guys that had played League of Ireland, most of them, and just the atmosphere and interaction was fun to watch. And it was a 3-0 game, and the fitness got the better of Lansdowne. But going up there, yeah, I mean, I could totally see myself going to Rochester Rhino games and having fun going to watching that team play. They had some good players in the team, and just a lot of fun, going and watching a game every week or every other week when, supporting your local club. So
yeah, we definitely need more of that. So
what's next, Jake?
That's what I was gonna say. You're my advocate. So where are we going next? You had mentioned we should do an Instagram poll to see where I should play next. So. Where are we going to next?
Instagram. I was thinking Twitter, but I guess you could.
Oh, sorry, Twitter. Sorry, Twitter poll. What's that?
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think they do polls on Instagram, but we could do it on Twitter.
I think they do, but it's only like two choices. But anyway, there's a lot of options out there. It's just a matter of, as always during this time, it's a matter of seeing what's right, both playing off the field. There's a ton of different factors that go into it, especially as players get older and people have families. I don't have a family, but a lot of guys my age do. So that makes those decisions a lot harder.
You have some considerations.
I mean, I just had a cat walk by my screen, so I guess I have a family. I'm a father of a cat. But yeah, there's a. I mean, he doesn't make my decisions for me. So there's especially during this time with the pandemic, and you don't know which places are going to be open or which places are going to be on lockdown. And there's so many factors going into this particular off season. And I know a lot of clubs lost a lot of money this year because they weren't allowed to have fans and they still had to pay their players the same salaries. So there's so much that goes into it. You even saw with Reno, who's one of the most successful clubs in the USL Championship, they folded. So it's definitely a precarious time in the USL landscape, maybe even the MLS landscape, and US soccer in general. But we'll see. My advocate is hard at work.
Yeah. I think you'd be remiss also to, like, we would also be remiss not to mention that, some of the clubs like Queensborough, I think might have been originally slated to come in 2021, and there might also be some other USL clubs. So some of the clubs that were looking to come in, Rochester was, I don't know if they're really ever coming back, but projection was 2021. I think some of the MLS clubs, so, also are kind of, those clubs are putting things aside in 2022. So I think on the positive side, on the negative side, there's that, but I think on the positive side, from what I can tell, I think, what you say about budgets and things like that is true, but I think it's also a positive for players like yourself, because I think clubs are, especially as we get closer to the start of the 2021 season. Hopefully there will be one, hopefully soon, early into 2021. Hopefully things are moving forward. I think clubs will be looking towards, American players and not, spending as much money on guys from other countries, bringing players in. The budget is there, to house guys, and most of the clubs still have to house you, but the cost of the salaries and competing with the clubs in Europe or South America or Caribbean or wherever they might be coming from, Mexico, all over the world. So I think it's just a little easier for the clubs and also for the scouting, as John Hackworth mentioned in our recent interview. I'm not sure when these will be coming out comparison to that, but just the scouting plays a big part of it, and they didn't have the resources to go scouting. That they might have been able to take a trip somewhere and look at a player, and it's just a little easier for them to see a Keegan or insert player name from Greenville or whoever, and let's give this guy a shot, and see what he can do for us here in the championship or in League One, So I think there's a lot of good options available to you. What do you have to say for the Greenville fans? Is this a goodbye, or is this perhaps a see you next year, or wait and see kind of thing, or honestly I don't know, and I don't pretend like I know, but just wanted to get your thoughts since we're wrapping this up in 2020 and you're just coming off a championship year with Greenville. What do you have to say to the fans there?
The supporters have been great. Yeah, if they've made it to the 4-hour mark of this part 1/part 2, God bless them. So
yeah, God bless anybody.
God bless anybody. My parents will listen to this.
Your parents
they've
probably
great.
Sleep.
Yeah, they've been great from the start. I think Greenville is it's a rich soccer community, and there's so much youth soccer. There's so much support for the national team and around for Atlanta United, for Clemson soccer. So there's a lot of fans in the area that crave soccer, and they've been so great to our club, especially, last year when we could have fans, we did pretty well attendance-wise. And I think if we had our own stadium, we would sell out every week. I think just the location of our current place that we're living and the fact that it's not our own kind of hurts us a bit. But the supporters that we have been great. We see them regularly at all the supporters events, and they're really a big, important part of us. And it's, as players, we wouldn't have the same success without their support. So we can't thank them enough, and I can't thank them enough. Whether or not it's goodbye, I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns, so we'll just have to wait and see. And if it is goodbye, then thank you. And if it's not, it's see you next year. I don't know, and you don't know. So time will tell over the next month or so.
Yeah, to be completely transparent and open with everybody, we really don't know. And, and publicly, none of the club hasn't announced any signings. So, there's no movement. There's nothing to really give away if anybody's actually still listening and curious, but you hear rumors like any other player, you're hearing rumors here and there, and I think most of the signings that we've seen, are clubs re-signing players, or I think Chris Swehan was a player in the championship who kind of went back to his home, so where he lives. So I think that's PJ. I talked to PJ the other day, Savage, and I think that's what he was saying about that. So we're not seeing the normal activity that you would see in all the different levels. But especially in USL, you're not seeing a lot of activity compared to what you would normally see, and you'd normally see clubs having a lot more tryouts. You'd have combines. You'd have the Midwest Combine for the young guys like Lachlan McLean, who played with you this year, went to the Midwest Combine. I don't know if that's where Greenville saw him, but that's where clubs like Greenville could go and see him and then identify players that came out of the college game. So it's a lot of things up in the air right now. So as we record this here in November 2020, it's a wait and see kind of thing as far as what lies ahead. But I'm sure it's going to be something good and something fun, and definitely you'll be playing somewhere, next year, and hopefully what much more, many more years after that, and many more quality stories for our podcast. We'll have to have part 3 and part 4, and we're going to be like Star Wars. We're going to go to part 9 and part 12, and we're going to have prequels, and we're going to have Darth Vader returns.
I don't think I'll be awake for part anything more than part 4. So so we'll have to cut it off eventually.
Hopefully, your next coach it doesn't unmask and he turns into Colin Miller, and you're doomed to ride the bench, and
Oh, please no. That would be my worst nightmare. But yeah, if you're still listening, thank you for paying enough attention and caring about me enough to listen to this entire part 1 and part 2 of this podcast. It's been an unbelievable ride so far. Yeah, it's been an unbelievable ride so far. I've loved every minute of it. And I think what we'll do, I'm just kind of thinking of this now, if anybody is still listening and they really have any questions that we didn't cover, they want to ask anything, I will ask whatever question you want, and I will answer it honestly. There are no questions, pretty much, that will go unanswered. And if there's enough, we might do a part 3. If it's not enough, we'll do a short video or something where I can answer on the beginning of a podcast that'll answer them. But
I think we've covered quite a bit. I think, if something comes up, but I think we'll leave some things out there. We'll kind of slip them in during some of our future episodes when the time is right, and circumstances come up, and maybe we can do a part 3 when we figure out where you're going to be playing next year.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Until next time, Dave. I'm the athlete.
I'm the advocate. And we're the aristocrats.